How's it going, guys? I want to talk today about Kazuki Yao, the voice actor of Franky, who has recently just announced that he will be stepping back from his voice acting role in the anime One Piece. In a statement that he published online, he wrote the following thing: "The time has now come for a sad farewell to the dude that I've spent almost a quarter of a century with. It kind of felt like an out-of-body experience, but I did feel like a gap has been forming between me and the Franky that I envision, and so I have now decided to get off of the Thousand Sunny for now. I feel frustrated, I do feel sad, I'm really sorry, however we found a super replacement, so look forward to the announcement on December 22nd at Jump Festa." Now, this statement has of course made its round throughout the One Piece community because Franky's voice actor is an absolute legend. I mean, not only are we talking about one of the core Straw Hat members in the anime, but also one of maybe, if not even the most iconic voice next to maybe Blackbeard's, with the way he talks about things, the way he pronounces words. It's, even for a Japanese voice actor, very unique. Now, in case you didn't know this, Kazuki Yao actually was voicing not just Franky, but also Mr. 2 and Django. So in total, 3 different One Piece characters, and I would just assume that he's stepping back from all of these, unless he's decided to, I guess, for some reason, just stick around for Mr. 2 and Django, since those are obviously roles that will not have that many lines left to say in the story overall. But the reason I'm making a whole video about this is not only because I'm incredibly sad, and I do want to talk about how iconic this role has been and how weird it will be probably hearing someone else voice Franky, unless they really nail that imitation of his, but 2 things in the statement really stood out to me. One is how the longevity of the One Piece anime is now starting to really, result in casualties in terms of the cast. And if you look at the entire, One Piece cast, the entire Straw Hat cast, there's a lot of fairly, older people now voicing these characters that obviously started over 25 years ago, maybe partly in their 30s, 40s, or like Franky's voice actor in their late 40s, but like these people are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s. So like the fact that One Piece has not been wrapping up, which we all obviously love, has been taking a little bit of a toll, I think, on, the overall cast, their youth, and of course everyone involved with the production. And I will be getting into that in just a moment too, but the second thing I want to talk about is this little comment that was in the statement here, where he announced that he's gonna step back as Franky's voice actor, where he really weirdly said that there was this gap that he felt between the Franky that he was performing for the anime and the Franky that he had envisioned and that he's grown to love and represent. And I feel like I'm not 100% sure what the real reason here really is for him stepping back, because we actually got to see a photo that has been making the, the rounds on the internet, where we see that this man is not in great health, sadly. I think when I checked, he is now around 65 years old, and even for a mid-60-year-old person, like, he doesn't look healthy. I don't know if he has, some physical issues or whatever it may be, but I would totally understand if he's just gonna take a step back altogether to focus on his health or just, enjoy retirement. Which I think, again, completely legitimate at that age, and, looking at the state that he seems to be in, even more so understandable, I would say. So really, this gap thing is the only thing why I'm really confused here, because he makes it sound in that statement almost like the reason that he stopped voicing Franky was not really because of his health concerns, so much so as it was a gap in between what he envisioned Franky to be and what either Oda, ended up developing Franky in, or what the anime has done with Franky. And I kind of want to talk about both these points because I think it's very important that this is something that he said. Maybe people might have missed that because, like, for me, that's a really, big piece of criticism in either of these 2 directions that I think is fairly important, to be heard. Why do I say that? Okay, so I think we all know overall that the, big part of the Straw Hat crew that has joined the crew after the crew entered the Grand Line, so basically everyone starting with Chopper to Robin, Brooke, Franky also, and I guess Jinbei, like, falls into like the separate category where he's in the New World, but mainly these 4 characters of the Straw Hat crew, they had their insanely big and important character arcs in their respective arc usually, where they joined Chopper on Drum Island. You had the same for Nico Robin, who had the biggest arc, obviously, Alabasta, Water 7, and then Ennis Lobby. You had Brooke, the entire Thriller Bark thing, and then you had Franky, also Water 7, Ennis Lobby, who you could say was maybe a little bit, like overshadowed by Robin, but Ennis Lobby, Water 7 have been my favorite arcs because of Robin and because of Franky. I think they're both insanely fantastic characters and they make that arc so very cool. But this was a very long roundabout way of basically getting to my point that one thing that I've been complaining for a long time, and I know many people feel the same way, though not everyone may, but hear me out, especially this part of the crew, this, Grand Line part of the crew, has been very severely neglected in terms of character development and like the role that they play in their story. There's a really fun video clip I remember that made its rounds a couple of, weeks or was it even days ago on the Japanese internet that a friend showed to me, where someone actually checked when the last time in the story happened that Franky had a one-on-one conversation with Luffy. Like, it was just the two talking, and that was ages ago. That was before the times, like, these two characters don't really interact. Like, Luffy does not interact with a lot of these characters one-on-one, and even if he does, like he maybe does with Chopper here or there, or, like, it's never something really deep. Now, I will put Nico Robin out of this group a little bit to the side for a couple of reasons. For one, she had the biggest character arc out of all of these 4. She also has now been getting, obviously, a lot more character development again with Egghead Island and now in Elbaf. And we have also always known that Robin will be playing one of the most central roles in the entire story, right? She's one of the only few people, if not the only person in the world, who can actually read the poneglyphs, kind of depending on if Pudding actually can or cannot. And we've been told by Oda over and over again that Robin might get kidnapped. Someone might, try and take her. And so I feel like there has always been this narrative, explanation why, even though Robin also, in my opinion, after the time skip was kind of, put to the sideline a little bit, why she was definitely gonna become important. I think a reason for that might have been that Oda was, kind of saying, oh, Robin, spend time with Dragon and the Revolutionaries. Over the time skip, she probably knows things that she's gonna reveal that she knew all along, that if we have her too much on screen, potentially that could be a problem, something I could personally see happening. And I'm okay with that. I personally really like that now she's going back to her roots. We just had her cut her hair again, back to the bangs. I like that vibe a lot more. But again, putting Robin aside here a little bit as like an exception, the other 3, Chopper, Franky, and Brooke, they had their little character arcs, and then they kind of became a little bit irrelevant. I mean, Franky is the shipwright, but he already built the Sunny that is technically kind of indestructible. It already has all the gadgets, and like Franky's entire role throughout the New World has kind of been like the goofball, like a stronger version of Usopp, maybe, I would say, because he's like, Franky's a decently strong fighter, but he kind of lost a little bit his coolness that he really had when we met him there on Water 7. This, like, I don't know, I really like that vibe he had in his like underwear, weird, quirky, but I kind of feel like after the time skip, Oda kind of turned that up a little bit too much maybe, and he's like kind of now this like cyborg robot, that's like his entire thing is just being quirky. But we kind of lost a lot of depth on the character, I feel like, until now. Similar thing for Chopper, who had a really touching backstory, has a really important dream, wanting to become the best doctor in the world. And even though he does, he plays a role, he does, heal people, he does, he heals the ice demons in Wano and so on and so forth. But he also has not really had any major impact on the story, if we're being honest, I think. He also doesn't really have these deep conversations anymore with Luffy or also anyone else in the crew. Like, he's kind of been reduced a little bit to the cutesy mascot, which is understandable, because, I feel like there is still so much more to his character that we could express, and that I hope we still get to see. And Brooke, the exact same thing. Brooke, this insanely, one of the most tragic and, most brutal backstories in all of One Piece. He then gets finally reunited with people who will take him on and like take him out to sea, and he even learns that Laboon is still alive. And then he becomes famous throughout the time skip, which is cool. And then he kind of does nothing. Like, the biggest thing that Brooke does in the entire post-time skip saga is stealing the poneglyph, rubbings from Big Mom, which was a great thing and was like the first point where people were kind of getting excited, like, Brook is finally doing things again, and then it kind of, went down again with Wano, where he kind of didn't really play a role. And same with Egghead Island. I don't even know what Brook did there, honestly, even though I've reread the arc twice now. And this is kind of the main problem here, which I think at least could potentially be what Franky's voice actor has been, a little bit disenfranchised with as well here in this comment. Now, full props, I might be reading too much into this, but it's at least the way that I personally would read it. Let me know if you agree with this or not. And I think the fair point here would be that Franky, for him, went from this free spirit, cool person who finally finds a family who accepts him for who he is, Luffy taking in people who are different than everyone else. He kind of goes from that to, again, this yes, he fixes stuff sometimes, but he hasn't really created anything crazy new. And then his entire thing is basically being a little bit goofy and kind of losing a lot of depth that the character, I think, personally had. And also the reason why for many people, Franky's actually their favorite character. I think Tekking, for example, there's a bunch of people I know, Franky is their favorite character, and I think that original version of him, I absolutely see that. And I do agree that it feels like we've lost it a little bit. And this is gonna sound harsh. Is there an argument to be made that would the time skip have happened a lot differently if Franky hadn't really been there? You had a scene where he, rolled his motorcycle into Big Mom's face, which was cool, but did he really do anything that made a big difference? And I might have forgotten something here, absolutely, but you kind of get my drift. The fact that it's not a clear yes, like it would be with Zoro or Sanji or Usopp, Nami, all these characters, these OG characters that Oda spends so much time and effort developing further and further. I feel like he just hasn't done that with that second part of the crew. And I think that's a bit of a shame, because the beauty of One Piece to me also is not only the world building, but the characters. The characters are the most fantastic thing about the entire story, the depth and the emotions that Oda gives us with all these, take the most recent chapter. I bawled my eyes out seeing, Robin's character arc take its next step, for example. So why not take some of that precious time and invest it back into these 3 or 4 characters of the crew that are part of the 11 or 10 most important characters in the entire series, the core crew. I think all these characters need more character growth. They need to have, a chance, I think, to express their worries and their excitement and have a chance to grow kind of like everyone else does. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji obviously at the spearhead of that. But then, similarly, again, Usopp has had great development. Nami has had great development. Robin now has had, again, finally some real development as well. And then Jinbei kind of is obviously an exception there. So that's kind of what I would be wishing, and something that I feel is what Franky's voice actor might be hinting at here. Now, with that being said, it could just not be Oda at all, and the manga could not be the problem for him at all. The problem could be the anime, where maybe, Franky just plays even less of a role, I would argue, than in the manga. And, I feel like maybe because the anime takes certain stylistic and artistic freedoms now at this point, making fight scenes look more brutal and more badass, I think a character like Franky might just be getting the short, end of the stick here, where he, might be losing some lines here and there, or the lines that the anime writes for him might just be not enough in character. Whoever is in charge of, writing some filler dialogue, which most episodes have, obviously, that could be something that he was not agreeing with, for all I know. So I think both of these, at least, even if you disagree, I think are worth taking a closer look at and kind of examining, because the longer that One Piece keeps going and the closer we're now finally getting to, the climax and the ending, I think it's really important for Oda and the story to focus back on all the core group, and all the Straw Hats matter. We all have our favorites, but I do wanna, when we reach the end of the journey, I want a satisfying ending, not just for Luffy and for Zoro and for Sanji. I also want to feel fulfilled that Brook finally meets Laboon again, and I think that can't happen if, we don't get anything from Brook throughout the entire new world, and then suddenly story is over, Brook meets Laboon again, he's happy. That moment would still hit, but it doesn't hit as hard as if, then if we keep seeing Brook worry about Laboon, and will he actually be able to see him again? What will happen if, the government wins? What will happen to Laboon? Things like these. And the same thing for Franky, obviously. So I personally strongly believe that Oda is going to give us all that. I don't have a single doubting bone in my body that we're gonna get more and more of that. Again, Robin on Elbaf and on Egghead. being the first step towards that, I think. But if that was a part of Franky's voice actor stepping back, of his decision there, then I would understand it, and I think it's something we should all at least appreciate and like give a second thought to. But now I want to get back to the other thing too for a moment, which was the health thing. And again, One Piece has been running for a long time, over 25 years. We're closing in on 30 years of publication of the story, and as you can imagine, voice actors don't get younger either, neither do any of us. I mean, I'm very curious, how old were you when you started reading or watching One Piece, right? I mean, time has passed, my friends. It's really scary. I think obviously we're gonna see more and more voice actors, you know, start getting older and older, and if the story probably is gonna keep, you know, going on for at least another 3-4 years, and then, you know, translate that to the anime and stuff, it's gonna take a while. And these people are gonna, you know, turn 70, gonna turn 80, you know, like even Blackbeard's voice actor, who I absolutely adore, he is also an elderly gentleman with a fantastic voice, obviously. But you know, you kind of start to wonder, okay, if we, like the longer the story goes on, the more of these changes we might have. And I guess the real challenge here, as will be for Franky, is finding someone who can fill that role more or less seamlessly. Now, I want to remind you guys that we've had changes before, obviously, in terms of voice actors. Kizaru, for example, is a great example, and I think that one was filled in pretty decently. I'm pretty happy with the new guy, even though the old voice, again, was very iconic. So it's a bit hard to exactly nail that tone sometimes, but I do have faith also in the Japanese animation industry, you know, to have the resources and talent to find someone who's good enough to fill that really big hole. That's what she said. Now, of course, we don't know yet who that new voice actor will actually be, but it will be announced at Jump Festa, so we don't have to wait for much longer. And again, I'm pretty confident that we're gonna have a good replacement for this absolute legend over here. I'm really curious to see, will he step down from his other two roles, Django and Mr. 2 as well? And I wouldn't complain if we see either of those guys a lot more in the story going forward. But yeah, it would at least be nice if he kept those two as like a little, you know, side project where he can like Easter egg appear in the story whenever they appear as well. But since this video has felt now a little bit more critical maybe than I usually talk about One Piece, which, you know, wasn't really the intention, I also do want to, you know, put things straight and say I personally have been enjoying Wano. Like, I feel like people often complain about post-time skip One Piece not being as good as pre-time skip One Piece, and I'm one of the people who do not agree with this. I think there have been arcs that have had weaknesses, you know, Fishman Island. Could it have been set up a little bit better? Maybe, but in the end, like, in afterthought, it set up so many important things and is one of the best arcs in so many aspects of the story, you know? And I think, again, a point can be made for so many of these arcs. Dressrosa, absolutely fantastic. We learned so much, new powers, you know, new info, new lore dump, whatnot, awakenings. Same for Zoe, was a fantastic arc. It just kept getting more and more exciting, more and more lore, more and more new world building. You know, Whole Cake Island, Wano, Egghead, fantastic, and I'm pretty excited for Elbaf too. And again, I think even when you love One Piece as much as I think we do, and as I do, I think it's still fair to sometimes voice a little bit of, you know, concern and things we don't maybe 100% agree with, because otherwise that would be, you know, kind of boring as well. But again, I have 100% faith that Oda will be, you know, taking care of Franky's character properly. Same for Brook and for Chopper and Robin already on a really good path. But I'm really curious what you think. Do you think Kazuki Yao actually stepped down because mostly his health, which again clearly was a factor, or do you think there is something, you know, a little bit fishy to the fact that he pointed out this gap between how he envisions Franky and what he's been delivering? Do you feel like that was an issue at all that he had there? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Also, your thoughts on what I said here today. This was a bit more of a free flow, you know, freestyle video, which was really fun. If you enjoy these, let me know. I'd love to make more of these, you know, covering more One Piece news like this. Just, you know, you and me, one-on-one. And otherwise, yeah, I do have, obviously, much better produced videos that you can watch, like this one here. We just had a really cool deep dive into all the crazy Bible lore and parallels in One Piece. The video might look wild. We called it Bible Piece, but I promise you it's gonna blow your mind. So if you haven't yet, go check that one out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.